That Indiana Fever Valkyries game was a bit of a painful watch, starting with the clock. The delay that just had both teams go back to their locker room, that made it for a bit of a painful experience. And then if you're rooting for the Indiana Fever, obviously it was a painful experience until the end, watching all those bricks and then the Valkyries pull away. But the first half took like 2 hours. So that was part of the problem. And then on top of that, the Valkyries build up a big lead in the game. Now, the Fever had chances. The Fever had chances to come back and actually win in this contest. But there was one play in particular that I think changed the entire game. I mean, look, there were several that when the Fever were fighting their way back, Aaliyah Boston had a turnover that she threw that led to a fast break the other way. Kelsey Mitchell tried to feed it into Aaliyah over the top. That was a turnover the other way. Natasha Howard had a really bad blown bunny, as you can see right here. This specific play, this is a big one just because of the circumstances and where you're at in the game. Down 7 points, right? And just can't hit the layup. And Natasha Howard had some brutal moments in this one. I don't know how many travels that she had, a 3, 4. It felt like travels all in rapid succession to the point where Stephanie White pulled her out of the game. But when you're Stephanie White, you don't have that many, options on the bench to bring in. I mean, Dantas only played 2 minutes. Brianna Turner got 18 minutes in the game, minus 16 in her 18 minutes, but you can, chalk some of that up to the runs that took place with all the threes that the Valkyries hit, because that was kind of the biggest swing is the threes. 6 for 30 were the Fever, and the Valkyries were 12 of 19. That's 63% to 20%. Just, that's a hard gap to make up. And you can argue maybe the defensive strategy should have been switched. It looked like the Fever were sitting back in zone at times. The Valkyries shoot the most threes in the WNBA, but they actually don't shoot them particularly well relative to the rest of the league. So they were on a super heater, and the Fever were on a brick fest. Kelsey Mitchell was just 2 of 10 from 3. The Fever aren't going to win many games, but they still were there. They still were there down the stretch until one play changed everything. One sequence really changed everything. And that was when Ariel Powers fouled Kate Martin on a 3 that turned into a 4-point play. You see the play here. It turns into a flagrant foul because she puts her foot under her there. Kate Martin hits the 3, much to the chagrin of Caitlin Clark, who you could see there. And at that point, the Fever were down 5 points, and then it goes to 11. So a 5-point deficit that changes to 11 points like that in one possession, and that was all she wrote. The game was over after that. Now, there's always questions after these losses, rotations and the like, and Kelsey Mitchell was sitting at the start of the fourth quarter. Maybe she could have come in a little bit sooner. Typically, stars do sit, the end of the third, the top of the fourth. That is not atypical. But it wasn't as if the run got things away. It was that specific sequence that allowed things to get away for the Fever. And on the other side, Temi Fagbenle is a better player than Dantas when you talk about who was kept in the expansion draft and who was protected, that is, and who wound up on the Valkyries. And then some of the smart signings that the Valkyries made across the board. I mean, they were just the better team. They've had the Fever's number all year, and that bevy of threes Indiana couldn't overcome. So what does it mean for the Fever and their playoff chances? Well, their playoff chances, it doesn't mean much because the Fever are going to the playoffs. That's basically been signed, sealed, delivered, locked up. There's no changing that. But it's the playoff positioning that gets upended. Golden State moves ahead of Indiana. Seattle now ahead of Indiana. It puts the Fever in the 8th spot, which would lead to a matchup with the Minnesota Lynx in the first round. That's not the team that you want to see. The Sparks 2 games behind Indiana. Now, I think going into today, the magic number for the Fever was 3, meaning any combination of wins or losses for the Sparks is enough for the Fever to get into the playoffs. So that's why I say that the playoffs are all but signed, sealed, and delivered. Now, the Fever do have to go to Phoenix for the next game, which isn't going to be an easy endeavor. That's probably another loss. The way things have gone and the way the Fever are currently constructed. But then it's Chicago, Washington, and a Minnesota team likely to be sitting everybody. So I think they could win the last 3 games of the season. Other news today, they signed Odyssey Sims to a rest of season contract, which doesn't really have too many implications beyond that they like what they see from her and they want her to be a part of the playoff mix. If indeed Caitlin Clark is able to return, they would have to get rid of one of Sims, Petty, or Powers, probably with Petty being the odd woman out, I would imagine, in that grouping, just because Powers plays a different position. One thing that really did annoy me is that we're now 2 consecutive games where in the pregame press conference, no one asked Stephanie White whether or not Caitlin Clark has practiced, which is the question. That's the only question right now. How does that happen? I do not understand. Where Stephanie White had previously said the one thing she needs to see from Caitlin since she's been back in shoot around is full contact practice, how she holds up when she gets gassed and tired and recovers and all that. And post game, I get why it's not asked because you're talking about the game. But there's now been 2 pregame opportunities, and no one has said, "Hey, coach, has Caitlin Clark been able to practice?" And if she hasn't, is there even time left for her to get ramped up? But the the coach of the year, I've said Stephanie White's had a case for coach of the year. Golden State doing a lot to lock that up for possibly Natalie Nakase. You look at her, Carl Smesko, but what a job the Valkyries have done from a scouting, from a stylistic point of view. For them to be in the position they're in is truly, truly impressive. And they just had the Fever's number all year. Kate Martin's had Caitlin Clark's number since she got to the WNBA, really. And in this one, it kind of came down. Sometimes it's as simple as the shooting. And I think that was really the case for the most part here. I mean, you look, the Fever were 33% from the floor. They missed a bunch of layups, just 20% from 3, while the Valkyries were 51% and 63%. That's going to be the math don't math at a certain point as far as coming back and getting that win. But I really think that the biggest play, of course, was that 6-point swing on the Kate Martin 4-point play in the flagrant. And then all the Natasha Howard travels. You can't just turn the ball over in rapid succession and it be unforced. So unfortunately, we were all forced to watch that. And the Fever, appropriately enough, got clocked.